Mark, do you guys feel bad about having won a World Series based on a fan ripping the ball out of Ben Ogilvy's arm and I think like causing some muscle strains or something that I think ultimately ended up turning that series to your favor?
No, anything goes.
There we go. There's your answer, buddy.
Anything goes. I don't see no asterisks. Too bad.
This is Gateway City Sports.
It's a trap!
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
This is the Team of Rivals podcast.
Everything you want to hear from the big sports to the big screen.
He's all by himself, fires into the end zone. Caught! Touchdown! No! Vaughn into the windup in his first offering. Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed.
Doesn't like you. I don't like you either.
Time winding down. Michael for three. Yeah! Yes! She is gone!
I can't believe what I just saw!
Go crazy, folks. Go crazy.
You believe in miracles? Yes!
You may fire when ready.
What?
Good evening, Cubs and Cardinals fans, and welcome to the Team of Rivals podcast. Proud members of the Gateway City Sports Network, where you can find great podcast and blog content. Tonight is September 8th, 2022. You can follow us on social media at Team of Rivals Pod or find us online at teamofrivalspodcast.com. For those of you who prefer to watch the show, we also post on YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. Hit those like and subscribe buttons and be sure to hit those notifications. Oh, so you see those notifications so that you know anytime we post new content. All right, joining me tonight, co-founder in his automobile, hopefully soon to be home. He's not ranked on the top cards on Twitter. He's not ranked anything top on Twitter because he doesn't exist on Twitter. He exists where we exist, and that's at Team of Rivals Pod. Also joining me tonight, our permanent occasional guest host, state champion, 1980, 90-something. That would be Elliot Dewey. He is in person, though, so that's good. Good to see you. Before we get into anything,
good to see you,
gentlemen, the voice that you would have heard on the show tonight leading in was the voice of good friend of the show, Mark Littell, former Major League pitcher for the Kansas City Royals and St. Louis Cardinals. Frequent guests on podcasts I have done throughout the years. Such a funny guy, such a social guy. Made a surprise visit to one of our shows, probably one of the better shows we've ever done. That was Mark Littell, and unfortunately, he passed away on us about 3 days ago, I think so. So, it was really sad news to hear. I'm really looking forward to getting him back on here after he recovered. He had open heart surgery, had some complications, and we lost him. So tough news. Tough news for all of baseball, all of those around him. My thoughts all week have been with just his family and anybody close to him. I'd like to think that, I didn't know Mark outside of a few, I think 4 podcast appearances and a handful of phone conversations, some text messages, and some back and forth on social media. So I considered him a friend. He was always generous with his time, and he didn't owe me, you, us, anything. We were just fans of baseball, but he was always generous with his time, always eager to share some stories. And I think he excelled and got charged up by just having conversations, just bullshitting around and getting people to laugh. That's how he landed on me. And it really sucks that, we won't get a chance to talk to him again. So again, though, yeah, most of my thoughts and wishes go to his family and for their recovery too, because I know that's a very, very tough loss. So tonight we'll hear sporadic clips of of the times we've got to spend with Mark. And that's just a taste of what he offered over 4 shows, almost 3 hours of content combined, starting out with the podcast I used to do with Chris on Cardinals Nation 24/7, Chris Lawless, going to Cards on Deck when I did that with Derek King, Two Birds on a Bat, and then right here on Team Arrival's podcast. So Mark was great. If you get a chance to check anything out he's done, he's an author too. He'll tell you that he never predicted he would do that, but he's written several books. All of them are fantastic. And tough loss, fellas. I know we have some baseball to talk about too, but you guys, and I'm grateful for this, but you guys got to experience a surprise visit too. And that was just a clip opening up here of Pete trying to be a smartass, and I think Mark answering it as only Mark could. But I'll turn it over to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't even scheduled to come on, and he just came on, and he, like, for us, God, it was over an hour that he just lit us up.
Yeah,
just talking fun baseball, and he didn't have to do that, and he did, and he seemed to thoroughly enjoy the time that he spent with us on that one night, and it was awesome. So yeah, it's sad that we won't be able to talk with him again and get his crazy stories about baseball life and in the major leagues, and just every all the smiles and stuff that he brings with himself and the aura that he had. So
yeah, so thankful that I've got a little over 3 hours of audio of conversation, one of them video that I did. The Zoom video is a backup for Two Birds, but I've saved that too. Watched a little bit of it on the nights this week that we didn't have a late baseball game or anything. I'm not talking about Major League Baseball game. Both my boys played Little League this week, so that started up. But just thankful I had that little amount of time with him, and I know he spent tons of time with countless other people, did a lot of work for charity too, gave a lot of his time away to that, and he was just part of the 40-year celebration for the 1982 world champion Cardinals, I want to say like a month ago, at the stadium, looking pretty healthy, jumped right out of the car. They drive those guys around the outfield track in by home plate, they jump out of the car. A lot of the older coaches and players that, they needed assistance, they had canes or they had something else. Mark jumped right out of the car, and he looked, he looked like he was in pretty good shape. And and a month later, we don't have him anymore. So it just shows you how kind of fragile that health can be, right? So 69 years old, but gonna miss him, Pete.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned how spry he was hopping out of the car, because if you listened to any of his appearances, it doesn't surprise me in the least. I get the sense that even if he was in poor health, and I imagine he might have been feeling it a little bit even at that time, he wasn't gonna let life or his health get him down. He definitely struck me as a guy who, who seized every opportunity that life gave him. And look, I mean, clearly a raconteur, but you mentioned he did charity work, and just look at our experience. We were able to turn his hour-long impromptu interview into several highlight cuts that we posted on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook, and they have some of the highest engagement of anything we've done in the 5.5 years of this podcast. And it's not just because he tells a good story, and it's not just because we were experts at cutting up his stories into something that was compelling. He just is that kind of personality. You wanna engage with him. You want to listen to him. And look, as a Cubs fan, I can't root against a guy like that.
No,
I just can't.
Yeah, it's really hard.
And I'm with you, man. I feel blessed to have had that opportunity that we did have to talk with him, even if it was only for about an hour on our podcast.
Yeah, and I remember. Just a random Saturday night during the pandemic, and it was in the summer months, that he called like 10:30 at night out here, and I have a feeling I think he was living in North Dakota, forgetting what time zone I was in. Probably thought I lived in St. Louis. I think he forgot, because I did Cardinals and baseball centric podcasts. I think he forgot that I lived out here, but he just called randomly like on a Saturday night. I think just to bullshit a little bit, but also to see if he could send me a chapter or two of a book, his most current book at that point in time, to read a couple chapters, just give him any feedback I could. So I was just reading the text chain after that, so I immediately, like, sure, I read it and I sent it to my dad too, to let him take a look. And, I don't much remember what the chapter was about, the content. I just remember the subject of panther piss came up, and I texted him back, and I'm like, panther piss, with a question mark on it. And he said, his response was, yep, heals and cures everything. So I had to go back and read that again. What the hell is he talking about? But yeah, so, I those little moments like that, those little times like that, just to think, gosh, I won't get to share any more of those or do anything. So I'll keep most of it on my phone, but, I sure am going to miss, having a guy like that around. And I'm sure the ones most closest to him are in some serious pain right now. But let's move on, because I want to get into this is about a 5-minute clip. So you guys, everybody stand by. But this is how Mark led into the surprise show that he called in on. So I'll play that now.
Mark, the story you posted tonight about, I believe it was 1991. A good old fashioned brawl. We have a lot of we have a lot of people on here watching. So if you'd like to share this live with some of the listeners right now, I think it's great. And I'm probably going to force you to revisit my favorite story of all time.
Whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, so if you want to, please just walk us through that, because that was the best thing I've read. Baseball related, that's the best thing I've read in like 2 months.
Well, anyway, but I was coaching with Boach. I was his pitching coach out in High Desert, and that's in the California League. And Bruce Bochy was the manager. I was pitching coach, like I said. And we were playing the Dodgers and Bakersfield team. Well, we would end up having 9 guys eventually go to the big leagues, and the Dodgers had 8. But unfortunately, they ended up having 2 Hall of Famers off of that team as well, and Hershiser and a couple other guys were pretty close as well. So you figure that out, what the matchups were like. Right. And it was pretty tight. High Desert, that was their very first year as a team. It was out in the middle of the desert. There was a bunch of desert rat people out there, and ladies with a whole lot of tattoos and stuff like that, all kinds of shit. But we were playing Bakersfield, and Pedro Martinez was the starting pitcher. And my guys got on the line the other day, and they started chirping him. And so I chimed in, and Ray Hobart, who was the shortstop, he got 5 years in the big leagues. Pedro threw at him twice. And I said, well, that's a bunch of shit. So anyway, we had a wild ass left-hander out there that didn't know where the ball was going. So I could get away with murder that night. And so he gets knocked down. Next inning comes up, and the guy that was throwing the fingers down, which was Mike Piazza, was the catcher. So Piazza's back there throwing the fingers down, and I said, well, that's the guy you want to go after right there. So anyway, we got guys on first and second, and it didn't matter if we drill him because we got the bases loaded, double plays in order anyway, so it doesn't matter. So my guy's going to hit him in the side somewhere. Unfortunately, Billy Badass goes out there, and his fastball kind of veered upward and into the guy's noggin, and it pretty much wiped Piazza out, and he was sitting there in front of the plate for about 30 seconds, cold as a wedge. And so both pitches came to the top step and put their spikes right in the dirt and held their ground. While everybody's looking at Piazza, and Blue Boy Trainer from Bakersfield's over there trying to revive him. Well, he rattles around eventually. I mean, he was cold though, and he just kind of gets up and jerks, and where's the fight? And there's no fight right now. So. And so, Bochy's out there, and he's fanning the fire. He's pissed anyway. And he's saying, well, hell, we should hit the son of a bitch anyway, probably. And, of course, we could get away with that back then, and because they already thrown it at Ray. And so anyway, everything gets calmed down after 4 or 5 minutes, and Tommy Byers was the manager, and everybody got back in their dugout. And I'm sure Tommy Byers, because I knew him, I'm sure he said to everybody on the bench, which I mean everybody, because both bullpens had cleared to the bench. Now the bullpens were empty; they were all in the dugout, expecting whatever. And we didn't expect it to happen. Actually, we expected it to be a normal game, but Billy winds up, and he throws a curveball to this Latino second baseman, and he drills the guy. Well, the guy looks in the dugout at Tommy. We've got 5,000 people in a high A ballpark. It's packed that night, and he doesn't know what to do. So he grips the bat up on the brand, and he looks at Tommy. He looks out at Bill, and he throws the bat down, and the fight starts. And it just kept on going for a pretty good time. But you had everybody. Hell, you had the cops coming out of the stands, even on their little broomstick horses out there. The desert rat cops, and they didn't know what to do. Stay off the field and stay out of the way where they get hurt. Because we didn't matter if a fan ever goes onto a field. Everybody redirects to the fan. By the way, they stop the real fight and redirect to whoever's out there in the wrong uniform or no uniform for that matter. So that's exactly what happened. And, it was pretty fun. That's a normal fight back then. And, so everybody got their licks in and punches in, and everybody went back to normal. And Piazza and Pedro and Earl Hershiser was on that team, and Mondesi was on that team. And then they had a whole bunch of other guys, and we did too.
All right. So that's how he led in with our show, with a good old-fashioned brawl. And we probably don't see stuff like that anymore, and if we do, it probably happens in a place where we would never hear about it, maybe somewhere deep south where people don't have their cameras or cell phones out. So the thing is, he had probably hundreds of stories like that.
Absolutely.
Some shorter, some longer, but they always had a lot of color to them. So all right, we got a lot to cover tonight, I think.
Well, hang on. Let me ask you guys something.
Yeah.
Am I the only one who noticed now, listening back to this, a certain vocal and storytelling similarity, not identical, but a similarity between Mark Littell and the show interrupter?
Explain.
Go back and listen. When you get a chance, go back and listen to it. Braden sounds a little bit like Mark. And Braden kind of tells a story. He wanders around like Mark does. The only difference is Mark knows where he's going with his stories, whereas Braden just keeps adding on details.
Braden's got...
Go back and listen to it.
The problem with Braden is I think he knows where he wants to go, but he lets heat and anger get in the way. And it's like that runner that who's jumping hurdles, but he trips over several of them before he finally gets across the finish line. That's my son, and it reminds me a lot of me. Even to this day, I have to put note cards out if I want to stay on the rails. I've got to practice. Get me in the heat of the moment. Pete, you've been doing this podcast with me for years. How often do I wander off? Quite often.
Better question is, how often do you manage to stay on track?
Shit. I think we tried a couple shows where we had them scripted out, and that was more effort than it was worth. It just sounded, if I went back and listened to myself, it would sound like just strained. No fun. You could tell where Pete didn't know, and neither of you guys knew Mark. Neither of you guys. And you can hear in that clip, Pete going, okay, former pitcher from the 80s. Okay, yeah, somebody Ron knows in one of those Facebook group stuff, so we're going to have him on the show for a little bit. You hear when Pete kind of turns, he's like, oh shit, this guy's he's going to give us some stuff we've never heard, but we typically don't hear. You see it, you hear it in the laughter. You're like, uh-oh, this is actually going to be good. I don't know if you remember feeling that way, Pete, but that's what I picked up on, because I was a little bit the same way. The first interview I had, I was aware of Mark. I remember the baseball card he was on, but I'm like, well, he pitched for Cardinals for a few years in the 80s, so we'll do a show. Gosh, a player from that era, late 70s, just early 80s. I'm not really sure what to ask him, right? Because I started paying attention hardcore to baseball about 1984, 85. So he was a little bit ahead of my time as a fan. And in that late 70s, early 80s, that's not like a player from the 60s. When it's... I just felt like the 70s were kind of a... I don't know. I'm not going to say a black hole. That sounds terrible. But the 70s weren't like... To me, I don't remember it as a memorable time in baseball other than, the Big Red Machine, Reggie Jackson and the A's, but I don't remember it being, it's just, I didn't recall a lot of memories from that era. So I went into my first interview with him not really knowing what to ask, but you find out when you talk to Mark, you don't have to ask a damn thing. He's just going to go, right? So, but I kind of felt it from you guys, not knowing him, but then figuring out who this guy was real quick.
Yeah, you know, Ryan, you're absolutely right. And you mentioned baseball cards, and it triggered in me. My timeline for baseball pretty much mirrors yours. We've talked about it before. I really started to get into baseball around 83 or 84. But that Cardinals Brewers World Series was, I think, my first hardcore introduction to baseball. And you're absolutely right. I was aware of things going on in the 70s, but in the 70s, I was way more into football. That's what my card collection was.
Yeah, yeah.
But now that you mention it, I'm pretty sure, and this is why I wasn't completely like shut off to this guy. I bet at some point in the 70s, I did have Mark Littell's baseball card, because when you mentioned it, the name was familiar. I didn't know him, but for some reason I recognized the name. So I'm guessing that I had in my very small collection of cards that somebody had given me in the 70s, I'm sure Mark Littell was in there somewhere.
I remember the Mark Littell card. In fact, the one I posted up the picture, and I know it was from, years before I really came around as a fan. I remember having that one. And I think I had most of the sets of the Cardinals up through late 70s all the way up through the early 90s when I kind of stopped collecting. But I certainly remembered the name, but I had no idea what kind of personality or storyteller this guy was. Not to mention, we even mentioned the fact that, I mentioned he's an author, but he also is the CEO of a company called Nutty Buddy. And that was something that he patented. I think he won like 5 patent awards or something for that thing. And, quite an accomplished guy, coming from, the boot heel of Missouri, country boy. He would tell you he was a redneck, and proud of it, but a cultured redneck, I think, if I remember the quote correctly that he told us. So, just a couple more clips. Let's throw them in here sporadically, but just other things that would just fly out of there that are just they're awesome.
Society of American Baseball Research, they said Mark Littell lost 3 ball games to the San Francisco Giants in a 24-hour period. I said they were wrong. It was a 22-hour period.
Is that, well, hold on. Yeah, so that was a clip from the first podcast I did with him, and it was just all kinds of things like that would fly out right in the middle of a story. So I'll have to look this up. He explained it on that show. The clip was probably too long to play. There were other stories told in between that. But yes, Mark Littell, on record, lost 3 games within a 22-hour span. And he quoted, I quote, "I drank San Francisco out of vodka those 2 nights." So,
jeez.
Yeah. All right. So we got more on the way, but I know we have some baseball on the way too. So the Cubs Cardinals played last weekend, a series in Busch Stadium. Last time they would face this year. Guys, I don't know what to take away from this. I know that the Cardinals ended up sweeping this series, but Sunday, scoreless game, and the pinch hitter Albert comes in and essentially just puts it away. It's 2-0, low scoring game.
Of course he did.
Ross elected to go ahead and pitch to him, I think, with a base open, and the way he's been hitting, I don't know what you guys think. It's like, the lefty they have in there is not terrible. So you think, what are the chances, right? It's been a scoreless game up to this point. Am I really going to put a guy on? In retrospect, he probably should have put the guy on.
Yeah, he probably should have. I mean, but who was it? So I don't know if you sent this or something because Rossi went out and talked to the pitcher and let him stay out there. It was probably like, just throw him a fucking meatball. We're not going to win this game anyways. Just do something nice.
It was me. Yeah. And I saw that posted up like within minutes of that happening. But so series sweep. But again, we know what kind of state that the Cubs are in right now. It's September. They're going to survive the rest of the season. Are you guys surprised that, I'm not saying that they have a good record, but are you surprised it's not worse on purpose, or where do you guys stand with this? Because they're not in dead last. I don't think I expected them to be dead last, but in third?
I mean,
or am I more surprised by Cincinnati being as bad as they are, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, they went 500, which has been their best month for August. So they played some pretty decent baseball. I mean, the Achilles heel of this ball club has been the bullpen all season long. I mean, it's kind of back and forth between starting and pitcher, but I mean, the starting pitching actually hasn't been awful. It's the guys have actually done pretty well, and I think they've, found some really good guys that'll be good for the future. It was awesome to see with this new guy that they acquired from the Yankees trade. Came up and did was Nesky came up and I know it's the Reds.
See, I thought earlier this year there's always a Cubs player that comes up every generation of players, not of people. People generations are a lot longer, but there's a generation of player that comes up about every. Let's call it the generation gaps are getting shorter in baseball, right? But I'll say this most recent generation, I think it's a toss up at this point. Is it going to be this kid that annoys the shit out of me for the next 5 years? Because earlier in the year, I thought it would be Morel. Could be both.
Could be, yeah.
But, yeah. So, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, he came in, and because it was Wade Miley's first start back from being out, and he went 3 innings, and then this Hayden Wisniewski kid comes in and throws 5 shutout innings and 8 strikeouts, and it was pretty cool to see. So, I mean, the kid's slider was just unreal. Throwing 94 to 96 on his 2-seamer or his 4-seamer. So, yeah, it's a little bright spot of the season. You gotta kind of find those here and there throughout with a season like this when you're straddling like 20 games under 500. So
if you have a player on the team not breaking some milestone mark or some record, you end up just wanting to see the youth come up and see what they can do.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
That's what it's
especially
really
this last month.
Right. So I don't know, Pete. I don't know what takeaways you have in the Cardinals series. I don't know if there is really anything to take away at all, other than
really.
I'm from the Cubs standpoint. No, there really isn't. I mean, and I told you guys this in the text, but when I wasn't even watching the game, and when I saw Elliott's text where he said, "Of course," I knew what had happened. Like I didn't even need to look. I knew what had happened, and in that moment, I felt quite a bit like Ron Burgundy, like looking at his dog and saying, "No, I'm not mad. I'm impressed." Right? Like, I mean, I can't at this point. I can't root against Albert Pujols. I can't. I know I'm supposed to. Mm-hmm. He's kicked our ass for 2 decades, but yes. I can't be pissed. I can't anymore, especially because his career is coming to an end, and so I know that I'm not going to have to endure that pain ever again. But still, for him to come in and in his last at bat against the Cubs, to hit a pinch hit homer to win the game, hell yes. Yeah. And you know what? I am all for it. Just as much as I am for Hayden Wisniewski continuing to show up the way that he did so that he can be the player that you hate, Ron, because if obviously he's going to get roughed up by Major League Baseball. It's one appearance.
Yeah.
But the way that kid struts off the mound when he gets a strikeout, he is going to. I hope he keeps that attitude and continues that success, because he is going to piss off Cardinals Nation like Yadier Molina has pissed off Cubs fans. I mean, I would not want to see. He reminds me a little bit of Javier Baez's favorite pitcher.
You can tell he just got home.
Yes, that's exactly who I was thinking of, Pete.
He's got that attitude on the mound, and when he strikes you out, like he's gonna. And as a starter, he's gonna piss people off. There are going to be some brawls because of Wes.
All right, well, put your keys away. Get out. Find your keys. Open your door. Get out of the stairwell. And we'll pause for a minute here while Pete gets himself situated finally at a proper mic. I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and play one more here. This is one of my favorites, not my favorite, but one of the favorite stories that Mark would tell us, and that's I'll just play it.
Tell us the lessons about blowing up a tree stump, because this is one of my personal favorites.
Well, about my character, I was kind of a redneck and still am, I guess, to a degree. I'm cultured though now. So I'm a cultured redneck. I even go to symphonies once in a while and say, what the hell is this? But anyway, my dad, I was 15, my brother was 14. Eric caught me. He played Mississippi State, and he got drafted twice as a catcher. And my dad, we did everything we could for about 3 days to win him over to let us drive up at, I was driving at 15 out in the middle of nowhere in Missouri to blow this one stump up, because we had been on point with him for blowing stumps for about 3 weeks at the point, and we actually wanted to blow one by ourselves, to show him that we were, we were the right kind of guy to do this. And so he finally says, he finally breaks down and says to us, he says, I'll let you guys blow that stump if you do one thing, anything, Dad, anything. Once you light the fuse, you don't go back and cut the fuse for any reason. No problem, Dad. That's fine. And he was a Korean War guy, and he got shot all to hell, so he was already pissed off. But the funny thing was we had all of our stuff, loaded up in the truck, and we were driving up to Tallapoosa, Missouri, which was 10 miles, and my grandmother lived up there, my mama Sally. And so Eric and I went and raided the kitchen before we went out to blow the stump. And then we had a case of dynamite, and it was about 3/4 full. And we called them turds when we put them down the hole. He said to put 12 turds down the hole. And so we ended up, Eric and I looked at that stump, it was a big old stump, and we both agreed and said, you know what, it's probably going to need about 6 more. So we had a 666, and we had a devil's load in there, and this stump. So we angled it in right and packed it in right, and we had the orange cord, and we had it all set and put the cap on. That's a real kind of touching thing, right there. You don't want to tap that cap too hard; it could go off. So we set it, and I had a big old international truck. It was like a tank, and so Eric. I said, hey, fire in the hole. You ready? He said, I'm ready. So I lit it, and I jumped in the truck, and we parked the truck right next to the stump, about 10, 12 feet from the stump. And we didn't move it before I lit it. So I light it. I get in the truck starts. I put it in the gear. I go forward, go backwards, forward. We're stuck. So the truck, Dad said not to cut the cord. So we said, hey, we got to go. So anyway, we had to leave the truck by our stump with everything lit, so it's going to go off in about 5 minutes because we put a 5-minute fuse on there. So we're out there waiting, and we're not worrying about Dad right now. But when it went off, the truck was between my brother and I, and all we remember was the first thing was glass blew out first. And we felt the earth actually rumble, and jiggle for a little bit. And then it went to, it was like a movie. That flew like a movie. I mean, it must have flew 100 feet in the air, and we got sand and dirt and some wood chips on us out 50 yards out, and it blew all the windows out, and we didn't want to see. We were kind of anxious to see what it did to the truck on the driver's side where it was parked, and it just pretty much annihilated the whole side. But there was about a 5.5 foot hole there, and about 15 feet across, and you couldn't even get in the truck, and the store, it was jammed. The lock was jammed on that side, and so we finally got it unstuck, drove out of there. We had no windows to drive home in, so we were eating bugs all the way back. And so, we get back to the house, and our dad was never in the shop, but he was this day for some stupid reason. And so I'm saying, oh my gosh, there's Dad. And so I drive in on the good side, and it looks like all this glass has been Windex, but there's no glass. It's that clear, Man, that glass was really good. Well, there ain't no glass. So my brother gets out. He's got a smart ass. He knew it was my ass in the first place because I'm the guy who lit it and everything else. And so anyway, Eric, Dad said, how'd it go? You guys, you get that stump blowing? Eric said, we sure did. And I'm back in the seat, and I'm trying to kick out my door so I can get a running start from Dad coming after me. I mean, tell you the truth, man, I got my ass kicked.
All right, that's one of my favorites that he tells, because he always tells you in passing, yeah, I blew up a truck when I was 15, and you have to pause him and you're like, whoa, hold on. I got to hear this one. And usually these stories are in his books too, but just another good story from him. So back to baseball, back to the modern times here. So you guys were, I know, Elliot, you're a big fan of Yachty and everything. He had 2 home runs today. I think that this year, he spent some time on the IL. He took a vacation back home to recover, somewhere around mid-year, most of July, and he's back now. And I've got this kind of feeling, and I know not one way or the other. I know how dedicated of a player he's been. I know how many innings he's caught, how many games he's started. A lot of years when he was in his prime and even past his prime, it was hard to keep him out of the lineup. Even on a Tuesday night against the Pirates, he was just always in there. I get this feeling this year that he's just reserving everything he can for that one final push for his final year. And that's what I get the sense of right now. Because if you look over the last few weeks since he's been back, his at-bats haven't been great. The dude looks tired. I mean, he had been looking tired, but I do think that it's just like a runner who knows their limit at this point and is just pacing themselves for one more push. And I don't. I know you guys don't watch these as much as I do, but that's just kind of the feeling I get right now. And I can't say that if that's the strategy and he knows that's what he has to do, that's smart. But then again, the guy equaled his season home run count in one day today, and he looked pretty damn good.
Good for him. I can't stand him. Retire already, please.
I know. Is Pete?
Yeah, how appropriate is that? We can root for Albert, and yet there's no room for Yachty or Molina.
Nope.
But he's earned it.
Yep.
He has absolutely earned Cubs fans' hatred because of the way that he has carried himself over the years. And it's a contrast. And, whatever it is that allows you to succeed, do it. But contrast how he has carried himself through the years with Albert and just how humble and businesslike Albert was. And that's why, I don't think Cubs fans feel bad about rooting for Albert deep down.
Yeah, plus Yachty
don't want to.
And Yachty has been there the whole time, right? Well, Cubs fans, you guys had a break from Albert at least for like 10, 11 years.
He's that constant annoyance player every single time we play him. It doesn't matter how shitty a season he's having. He always seems to be in the thick of a 2-out rally or something to come from behind to win.
And that's been a much shorter duration, but that's how I feel about Ian Happ.
Yes.
For me, I'm like, why is this son of a bitch up every time when a tying run's on?
How do you think the Reds feel about him?
I'm sure worse, but I just feel like that guy's always there.
We play the Reds, he's hitting a home run or
yeah,
a double or robbing a homer or something to him.
Well, I look forward to. So I don't know who looks angrier at this point. So I've got. There's always one in my mind. It was and usually it's a Cub for some reason. Jake Arrieta had that title for a very long time with me. Ian Happ has taken that torch, run with it. I think he's got some competition though, and I think that's in Luke Voit.
Oh God,
Luke Voit looks. Here's the little redemption from Luke Voit last night. Luke Voit he was drafted by the Cardinals. He's grew up in the area, local boy. The Cardinals obviously traded for Paul Goldschmidt. Nowhere to play Luke Voit. Now remember, guys, this is a time before DH was a thing in the National League. Mm-hmm. There was nowhere left for Luke Voit to play. He was not going to get any at-bats. If DH thing would have been at the doorstep, it may have been different. But they traded him for a reliever, Giovanni Gallegos, and another left-handed reliever in Chasen Shreve. Now, Gallegos over the years has been pretty good. This year, he's definitely had some times where he hasn't been as good. But last night, tie game, I think it was tied 1-1. Luke Voit up with the runner on. Gallegos on the mound, just hits a 2-run jack-off. Pretty convincing one, too. It wasn't a cheap shot. And that had to feel pretty damn good if you're Luke Voit. Like, team that dealt me away for this reliever, A little bit of revenge, and I'm sure that felt good for him. But I looked at him the whole time, and there's been players. I'm going to list off just a few. Johnny Gomes was one of those other ones, just perpetually pissed off. Always looked angry at the plate. Jake Arrieta hated life, except for his fucking Pilates ball. And probably his wife. Ian Happ, now it's Luke Voigt, and now I think the King though, and I'm not giving the proper respect to the man in baseball that demands respect around the clock. He demands respect from the fire ants in his yard or the fucking birds that fly around the neighborhood, and that would be Tommy Pham. I think he's king of unhappiness. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're right.
I wasn't sure where you're going. I thought you were going to go with pitcher with the two different colored eyes.
Oh, Scherzer.
Oh, Max Scherzer.
Yeah,
I think that's a different level. I get a different sense from him. Like that's just
he's not angry. He's crazy. He's just crazy.
He's just okay.
He's just nuts. Maybe if we were alive when Bob Gibson was humming, that we would feel that way about him too. That that's just that is just an ultra competitor that just didn't have a poor childhood, and it's just pissed off at anything. Even after he retires, he's mad at Wendy's for some reason.
How can you be mad at Wendy's? Come on.
You think a Frosty cures everything, but I tell you, Tommy Pham would be pissed off at it for some reason.
That's just wrong.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Don't know where I was going with that. I'm just talking about mad players and players that annoy me. Ian Happ is one of them. Why he's not dealt already. I'm sure it's obvious to you guys, but as a Cardinals fan, I'm just don't want to see him anymore.
Hey, maybe Tommy Pham and Ian Happ will end up on the same team.
I want to see Pham, Voigt, and Happ end up on the same team.
That'd be phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Tommy Pham, today, God, where was it? It was at the San Francisco Giants game when Jock Peterson was up to bat.
I don't know why I'm laughing. It's funny already. Go ahead.
There was a little blurb up on the big board that says knows the in and outs of fantasy football trading.
Well, I'm sure he'll take issue with that. Mark broke his pelvis bone on a bull once.
And it's just amazing, just having fun there. That's easy. But when I rode a bull, named Playboy, that bull tore me a new ass. I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you. that not only did that bull tear me a new ass, it broke my damn pubic bone. I couldn't get out of bed for 4 days.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
Ouch.
There's a video of that on YouTube. You can look it up.
No shit.
Mm-hmm. And the one I don't have a clip of, but he was describing it was, I think he was on The Science of Sports, some kind of show that was on Fox all the time. And he stood in front of a pitching machine throwing 90 miles an hour and took one right to the crotch. Because he was promoting and talking about his Nutty Buddy Cup, and he calls it he took a 90 mile an hour heater to the Peter. So, Peter, you home now? Do you have a camera? Can we do this right?
No, we don't need a camera right now. You know what's funny is you mentioned Nutty
in the
Buddy
bathroom,
and apropos, no, I can't get my. I'm not going to get into the details. I can't get my computer set up.
Okay.
But apropos of Nutty Buddy, I actually received an email from Nutty Buddy just the other day because it was a year ago that I bought my son his Nutty Buddy for baseball. And so they actually sent we hope you're doing well and we want to share the wealth kind of email. So I can't imagine that they would object if I share it. So for those of you who are listening, if you want to honor Mark right, just go to nuttybuddy.com. Buy the set that fits your boys best, and for your promo code, put in "Protecting the Boys," no spaces. Protecting the Boys, you're going to get 15% off. I can't imagine that Mark would object to our listeners doing themselves a little favor here
No.
And protecting their boys.
Now, I did text Mark not too long ago because we did order one of my boys the hammer, the jock strap, and the shorts, right? The whole shebang.
Yep.
His first comment was, I'm not sure if I like it. It makes my penis look too big. So I texted this to Mark and I said, here's his comment after trying on the hammer. It makes my penis look too big. Period. I don't think he gets it yet. So that was posted within minutes on Facebook, not with my name attached to it or anything, because Mark would normally ask about something like that. I didn't care if he did. I know the comments were, this kid should be a part of an advertisement, and Mark goes, he's going to be. So in some newsletter or some Nutty Buddy advertisement, that quote will likely be in there. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah. The anatomically correct cup. And it can allow you to take a 90-mile-an-hour heater to the Peter. That's protection. You know what else you need? We all need protection. That's why you need Allstate. Sometimes life throws you a curve, and that's why you need Allstate. The Wiley Group has 2 locations, one in Festus, another in Arnold, to serve you. They offer home, auto, boat, motorcycle, business, life insurance, investments, and so much more. They can customize an approach that is unique to your situation to make sure you, your family, and assets are properly protected. They offer great rates and savings. Give Sean and his team a call today at 636-764-6294. We all have busy lives. You can email Sean at SeanWiley@allstate.com. Talk to him about your coverage options. And remember, you're in good hands with Allstate. And your boys are in good hands with the Nutty Buddy Cup. What else is going on in baseball, folks?
You know what? Before we get to what else is going on in baseball, Ron, I think that we need to acknowledge that you very well may have broken news, because I didn't see any mentions of Mark Littell's passing until long after we had posted on our social media. So you may have been at the forefront.
No,
of breaking some news there.
Yeah, no, there were several, and you probably wouldn't have seen them, Pete, but they were, I think, close friends of his, probably maybe family or just people that live near or stayed in close contact. I had seen, once it was mentioned to me, I had started seeing it pop up on social media, and so I'd seen enough to know, yeah, this is a real thing. And I knew he just had surgery, and I knew it was complicated. He was in ICU. But I had gotten it a little bit later. In fact, Pete, I happened to be at work when I heard it. And the first I'd heard of it, honestly, was from my dad, who had seen it on social media. And he's retired, so he's at home all day. So he had picked up on it first. That's how I learned about it.
Damn.
And my
I was
dad
really hoping.
No, I'd heard about it from Dad. Dad had, one of the podcasts I did, my father was on it too, because, obviously he followed the Cardinals a lot closer than I did in the late 70s. So he'd had a conversation or two with Mark as well. So my dad did know about it and alerted me and, saw it enough to where I'm like, okay, this is actually a thing. So, no. We don't break news here. We'll comment on it.
No.
But we'd have to have some kind of dumb luck to break anything. That's not the kind of news I want to break anyway. So
no,
definitely not. Let me see if I have one more in the bank here that I wanted to get to. Okay, I've already played all of those. So this was, I think guys, I'm already drawing a blank whether I played this one or not tonight. I think I did. The Lou Brock 3000 set, right? I've already played that.
No, you have not yet.
Okay, well, I spoiled it. This was Pete trying to be a smart ass here, asking Mark about a question. I feel like I played this before, but maybe I didn't.
Well, here you go. Matter of fact, tonight Lou Brock got his 3000 hit. We were playing the Cubs in St. Louis. He gets his first hit. Right off the bat, he's leading off. In the 4th inning, he drills Lamp in the foot, gets his second hit. They stop the game for 10 minutes, everything. The unique thing about that game is I pick up the win against the
So so glad you asked that, Pete. I don't remember what the question was.
That was great.
But Yeah. So, I mean, Elliot, I know that you were busy last show here, but we talked a little bit about the more balanced schedule going into next year. We're only playing division foes 12 times rather than like the typical 18, 19. I wanted to get your whole take on that because I'm actually a fan of it. I think baseball at times needs a little bit of a shuffle. With even guys like me, my 17-year-old son struggling to watch games throughout the year. I think it's okay to mix it up a little bit where all teams will play all other teams.
Except for one time. Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Can we continue to play them 17 or 18 times this season?
No shit. I'm all for not.
No, I mean that's good. I like having the more balanced schedule because there's other teams that I'd really like to see play more often. Mm-hmm. So it's good because I mean sometimes you only see teams twice. You'll do a two game series here and a 2-game series there, and it's like, why don't you guys just play the third game? It doesn't make sense to do 2 and 2. So, no, it'll be nice. It'll be nicer to play those other teams, see them more, like you said, have a more competitive balance to the season. So if you are playing in a weak division, you're not, it's not unfair to those other teams that are playing in a tougher division, having to play tougher teams more often.
Right. As long as they eliminate that whole natural rivalry thing, like there's no reason why the Cubs have to play the White Sox every year 6 games, or the Cardinals have to play the Royals 6 games. Like they should really,
let the Cardinals play the White Sox for 6 games, and the Cubs will go play the Royals for 6 games.
I'm not really sure it matters at this point.
No, it really doesn't.
And Pete, the more time I've had to think about this, I really like the idea of, players like, that get the spotlight all the time. Like Judge is going to be seen in 10 more markets now. Now, whether he's in those markets or it's on TV, you get to see 10 more groups of fans will get to see Aaron Judge. They'll get to see Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout,
See, and that's the big thing is getting those teams that should be seen in bigger markets more often, more exposure to more fans. That's how you're going to grow the sport.
Yeah. I don't know, Pete, does you feel any different than you did last week? Because I've been thinking about that a little bit more.
No, I don't. I mean, you're right. I do like the fact that more fans are going to be exposed to better players. That's a great thing. We want that in order to build the game. But I still maintain that I think they just need to, at this point, just get rid of the divisions. At this point, there's no point in the divisions. If you're going to have a balanced schedule and you're going to play teams roughly the same amount, then just get rid of it. Play teams the same amount within your league, and the top 6 teams make it to the playoffs.
Yeah,
and just seed them. I mean, honestly, I would rather see the team seeded anyway than to have a division team that. And we've seen this, right? Mm-hmm. A team that barely finishes over 500, and yet somehow they get to have home field advantage over a team that finished with potentially the second best record in baseball.
Yeah.
But, they finished behind another team, and now they got to go on the road the first round. That's, I'm definitely not a fan of that. And I think that you would be much better served. Baseball would be much better served by, at that point, just getting rid of the divisions entirely and just having league standings, and top 6 make it. We seed the playoffs, and let's go.
Yeah, and another thing it makes me think about is how will that impact World Series home field advantage, right? Because typically it used to bounce back between American League, National League. For a while, they tried that stupid-ass experiment where the All-Star game dictated who was home field advantage for the leagues, which, I always thought was terrible. So with a more balanced schedule, it's interesting to see if that ever evolves as well, where, best record through the playoff run ends up getting, home field advantage in World Series. Just like to see that, I don't know, settled a little bit better for the majority of us, where we're like, okay, well, hard to argue now. Might not like it, but I get it. I don't know. It's a good change.
Yeah.
And I'm looking,
No,
and you're right, Pete. Nice. Like the baseball is like the Alamo as far as giving a shit about divisions. Like they're the only one left. I don't know how many people actually pay attention to division standings and everything in terms of hockey or basketball or anything else at this point.
Yeah, I don't think they crown like division champions in hockey, do they?
No,
I don't.
Not that
I don't think I've. I mean, yeah, you win your division, but there's nothing. There's no. Yeah, it's.
I don't recall a lot of flags being up about.
Deal.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah,
conference is the only thing. I mean, either you win your conference or you don't.
That's why I don't hate the idea.
Yeah,
I think it'll take a while for baseball to get there, but I don't hate it at all.
And speaking of,
what does that do to rivalries?
It doesn't have to do anything to rivalries. If anything, it should help because, I mean, think about one of the rivalries that the divisions completely destroyed, the Cubs-Mets rivalry. That was a really, that was a huge rivalry from the moment that the Mets started as a team. And then once they added the Central Division and the Mets and the Cubs only played each other a handful of games each year, that rivalry went
the Cardinals
right out the window.
The Cardinals and Mets had a pretty good rivalry too in the 80s.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, things like that change and they can be unpleasant. You know what else is unpleasant, stressful? That's buying a new vehicle. It doesn't have to be. Fifth Street Motors, located in Pacific, Missouri, will help you find the vehicle you need, no matter what brand. Fifth Street Motors believes in giving you the best price on a pre-owned vehicle that will fit your budget. Give Brandon or Dawn a call today at 573-259-1306 and tell them Team Rivals Podcast sent you. All right.
Speaking of changes to baseball, I don't know if you guys caught the news this evening, but apparently we're going to see some pretty big changes to on the diamond next year. The vote's coming up, and everybody expects it to pass. Ron, I don't know. Did you catch it? I know Elliot did.
No, you better enlighten me.
So we're looking at next year. The pitch clock is coming. Bigger bases are coming, and some form of ban of the shift. All three will be implemented in Major League Baseball next year.
Yeah. The bigger bases is something I think that is going to be invisible. I don't think we'll notice.
Yeah.
The shift during gameplay, like unless you're there at the stadium, I think on TV, I don't think you'll notice too much, except you'll probably see a few more base hits that we used to see. And even the pitch clock, I think other than veterans like Max Scherzer, who hates rule changes, a lot of these young guys that are coming up, guys, work quick because they were used to a pitch clock in the minor leagues. And they talk about it all the time. Veterans that have to go down and do a rehab stint, all of a sudden there's a clock. But these younger guys coming up, I have to think they're kind of used to it at this point. So I really believe that even these changes are in place. I don't know, Pete, what do you think? I think the only noticeable one might be the shift.
Yeah, because I think we're going to see more balls in play because of that. And I think that the shift long term is going to be the most significant one because I hope anyway that we'll see hitters go back to what we saw when the three of us were getting interested in baseball, that we'll see guys looking to hit it everywhere and not trying to bomb, every pitch out of the yard. Although, just as I say that, of course, we know that is exactly what is not going to happen, but
that's going to take a
boy can dream.
That's going to take a generation of players to start, hey, shift's not there anymore. It'll take 5-6 years for a next wave of hitters to come up that can deal with that. Right. So,
yep.
The crop that's coming up now is dealing with the realities of the shift. The next one won't have to. So I don't know.
Wasn't there, there's another rule too. It's like something with the pitchers step off, or they can only like the throw over. It's something that's going to allow probably the potential for more stealing too.
Yeah, I think it's I think you can throw over maybe
3 times,
twice.
Yeah, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I haven't had time to absorb that one yet.
And
per batter, right?
Oh, yeah, you're talking about the bat. Well, per batter, but also I think that there's going to be something implemented as well that limits the batters on the number of times that they can step out of the box.
Okay. Well, the pitch
Right?
clock's going to force
that
them
would
to be in there.
Exactly. But that would be the way, in theory, right, that they could manage pitchers is if pitchers have to deliver in a certain amount of time, but batters can step out whenever they want, then it shifts it way too much to the batter's advantage. So I do believe that there'll be a limit per at bat to how many times you can step out of the batter's box.
I think the one thing that'll put batters at advantage the most, though, is the automatic strike zone, which I don't think there's like immediate line of sight to that one yet. I know they're testing it. They'll probably still tinker with it for several years, but that's something I don't see happening in the next 2 to 3. I don't know what you guys think, but I think that's going to be a while before we get to that point. And instead, I'd like to see them make iterative steps to correct umpires through the game of, hey, you've been calling shit all over the place. Hey, look, take a look at this iPad between innings. Think about it, correct yourself, don't overcompensate. I know it's a delicate walk, right, with some of these guys, but I like to see them try to do that first. Or, take a look at how they're evaluating guys and look, we have to renew our driver's license as we get older, right? They can't just assume that we know how to drive anymore, especially when you get old. So some of these guys that are aging umpires, they need to do the same thing. They need to make sure they've got a good calibration on a strike zone. We won't have to mention names, Pete. We did that all last week, but like to see them do that before they implement robots or laser beams to call strikes. Just my version.
I'd like to see a slow additive of that, where maybe, you can't really do a challenge because that would just take way too much time out of the game.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like if there's like a call in the ear for the umpire, and if I don't know if they'll
like
just
to
allow
see
them to override it or
any
to
kind of
help them
corrective actions taken that doesn't cause the umpire to overcompensate. Like
Right.
if he's calling stuff outside and low all game, and they're like, "Hey man, you've been calling stuff like 6 inches off the plate, low and outside," that he doesn't way overcompensate, and then all of a sudden something that is over the plate but outside on the outer half,
Right.
all of a sudden he's not calling that because he's petrified now that he's making the wrong call. So it's not an easy thing to correct, but they've got to have some way where an umpire can look at what they've just called and be like, all right, shit, I need to dial that in a little bit.
And I think you guys are both right. This is one that they definitely need to be careful with, because this is the one change that if implemented poorly, but also if implemented carelessly, could have a massive effect upon baseball immediately. And this is one where,
because it's every play,
you really
right?
can't
It's
afford
every
to
single
get
play.
it,
Yeah.
right. And you can't afford to get it wrong, because it has the potential to alienate fans permanently.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I think it's going to take a compelling case for baseball to eventually ever go to an auto strike zone. They're going to have to just be like, look, balls and strikes have been the most protested thing in baseball throughout the years. The most frequent, obviously, because it's a play that happens every single play.
It's the easiest way to get thrown out of a game is by arguing balls and strikes.
I guarantee you most do, right? So, you can't challenge every third strike call or first strike call. Like that, you're right, Elliot. The game would take forever, but there's got to be a way at least that umpires can there's got to be something the league can do to help dial these guys in throughout the game. And I know there's something to consistency too, right? If an umpire is consistently calling the same zone all game, even if part of it's out of the zone, like most teams don't complain about that. It's when they're all over the place too. So
maybe the call's not in their ear constantly, but maybe the umpire could, if he's not sure, can hit a button on the side and it'll tell him what the call was on that last pitch.
Yeah, I don't know. There has to be something that can be done.
I think it might have been after the game when Ali got tossed, but I know there was a game in the past week or so where both managers were chirping at the umpire.
Buckner.
It was
against the one you're referring to is one I brought up last week. That was Marmol and CB Buckner and
was it and his strike zone got better afterwards, right?
Yeah, after Marmol got ejected, it was CB Buckner.
You know, that makes me wonder. Maybe they ought to actually relax the restriction on questioning an umpire on his strike zone. Maybe it's not an automatic ejection, because maybe it's that kind of corrective that an umpire needs from time to time. If an umpire knows that you don't get to question his strike zone, there's no incentive for him to change it. But if you as a manager can come out and say, hey, I think you're missing the ball. One, you're either missing the pit balls on the outside of the plate, or two, your strike zone's inconsistent. Maybe that's the kind of wake-up bet in an umpire. It's exactly what you're referring to, Ron. It's that corrective in-game to where an umpire has to look at what he is doing and
those guys have
the opportunity to correct.
Well, and they're human beings
too. Those guys have the iPads in the dugout. They could bring them in, man, and say, hey, look.
Well, I think the league can too. I mean, there's always an official from Major League Baseball somewhere right behind the backstop that
maybe they use them.
They can show them the same thing. They don't have to go into a dugout and make it look biased. They've got the technology to do it. Christ, they have people sitting in New York that do replay, so they can certainly take steps, I think, to help these guys dial in. They're going to have bad days from time to time. They're human beings, and they do this all the time. So, they officiate 162 games a year. I know they're not behind the plate every fourth game, right? It's a 4-man crew, but still, these guys are allowed to have a bad day once in a while too. Just some of them have more bad days than others, and I think we know the names of most of them. Guys, we've went a little over time today. Pete, do you remember the show close by heart? I don't really want to read it. I will if you need me to. I
don't remember it by heart, so all I will say is thanks for listening to us. We appreciate you taking the time. Be sure to check out the other Gateway City Sports Network podcasts, including Talking Sports in the Bleachers and the Derek King Sports Show, and the other ones that don't produce any content recently, so don't worry about them. But, hey, be sure to check us out on socials on Team Arrivals Pod. You can find Elliot at
TOR_Elliot.
And you can find Ron at
TR_Ron75.
And if you want to send us something a little bit longer and don't feel like sending us a DM, be sure to send us something at the show at teamarrivalspodcast.com. And with that, hey, you know what, guys? Let's pour one out for Mark Littell. He will definitely be missed, and we need more people. We need more Mark Littells.
We do
in sports.
We absolutely do. And to send us off, I'm going to before we do the outro, I'm going to send us off with my most favorite story that Mark tells, and that is Mistake by the Lake. Granny gets cold cocked, and we will talk to you all next week. We love you all so much.
I want to revisit one story from your book. I cold cocked Granny because it might be my favorite.
It was a Mistake by the Lake. Granny gets cold cocked. True story. There were 60,000 people that night in Cleveland, and he had that twice a year, and they gave cars away, every inning. So I was warming up in the bullpen, and there's no way you could throw a ball out of this bullpen, but I guess I found a way. It was like some goose squirts were all over my fingers, and all of a sudden, a ball goes flying out there, and my catcher just turned his glove up, and he starts laughing. He picks his mask up, Bob Stinson. It was. I basically said it was like a loose Scud missile up there, and so I didn't know who it hit, but no less than 5 seconds later, that bullpen was filled up with all kinds of crap. It just parachuting in, and we thought we were going to, do the Alamo right there, and all we had to throw at him was Copenhagen cans and maybe 2 baseballs. So, and Whitey called down and he said, "What the hell is going on over there in the bullpen?" Because it was catty corner in the old stadium. And Doug Bird said, "Well, I think Country must have drilled somebody up in the stands. They're all pissed off over here." And so there was 20,000 people over there trying to climb in, I guess. And Whitey gets on the phone. He called me Airhead, and he said, "Air, what's going on?" I said, "Well, I had a ball get away from me." I said, "Geez, it must have got shot out of my hand." He said, "Well, hell," he said, can you jump that fence right there? I said, yeah, it's a 40-inch cyclone fence. And I said, yeah, I can jump it. He says, don't go through the gate. He said, the safest place for you is in the middle of the diamond throwing. Are you loose? And I said, sure. He said, when I hit the third base line, he said, that's your cue to jump the fence and run to the mound. And I said, sure. Okay. So I get out there and Whitey's snickering. Now there's, all these fans are starting to move. I guess they're spreading the word. There's an asshole out there on the mound. And so, I mean, they're all booing me now, half of the stadium. And then by the time I get out of the inning, 3/4 of the stadium. So Galen Cisco, my pitching coach, says, hey, Country, you want another inning? Because we hadn't got a lot of work at that point. We ended up winning 102 ball games that year. We wouldn't win that night. But it was on July the 3rd, and everyone shoot off all the fireworks, too, So, anyway, I went back out, got booed again, got out of the inning. Bill Beck comes over down from the deal. He says, hey, Country, I'm in the clubhouse eating the spread up, and, it's the 9th inning. He says, how you feel? I said, oh, pretty good. I wish we had, 2 more runs right now. And he said, hey, I got a question. He said, did you mean to throw that ball up in the stands? I said, no. And I said, really? And I said, no. And he said, well, here's what happened. You hit some older woman up there. I said, really? And I said, my ADD kicked in. I said, well, do you think I should sign a ball for her? So he just slumps his shoulders and walks out. Everybody in the clubhouse, they weren't laughing. They were rolling in the floor at what I just said. So much for signing a baseball for the older lady.
Yeah.
But she lived. They were carrying her out when I was going to the mound, out there. I could see the gurney going up with her, pretty amazing. Wow. I must have smoked Granny, cold-cocked her. She probably, matter of fact, I said she probably landed in her grandson's lap. That's what I said in the book, which was probably wasn't far off.
Goodness.